We've seen how to read from and write to files. There's one read mode, although there is an optional B binary modifier to open a file in binary mode. And then there are two write modes. One write mode, ordinary W, will overwrite a file if you open it. If the file exists, that file is overwritten by the new writes. If you append, then things are added to the end of the file. So we have three major modes: R for read, W for write and clobber the recipient file, and we have A for append, which is write, but just add new things to the end of the file. Today what I want to talk about is a very short subject. It's called using a context manager. And probably the best way to do that is to demonstrate this. I'm gonna write two little programs. One, and the first of which is just gonna emulate the action of Unix's cat facility. So cat just takes a file and puts it to the screen. Okay, and so we will, let me try another terminal. It's giving us a delay here. Okay, good. Okay, so cat. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say, we're going to import sys. From sys import argv. Let's do that, because the only thing we're going to use from sys is argv. Okay, so I'm actually in a file and I'm writing a program right now. So the first line is to import argv, and then I'm going to say file name. Lots of nonsense going on today. Is equal to argv. Now remember, the way argv works is whatever the user types after Python, all that stuff is put into a list of strings. And the 0 entry is just the name of the program. So we're going to get the first entry. File name is argv1. Okay, so we'll get the first entry, and that will be the file name that the person enters. Okay, so now I'm going to do this. I'm going to say open, let's go with. So we're going to use a context manager here. Notice the new keyword with. So what you do is you say with, open, file name. And you'll notice I didn't put quotes around it because it's already a string. All right, it's a legit variable. So we're going to open that file for reading. And that's a boss statement, so you put a colon at the end. Notice it's an incomplete sentence. With this object, well, what are we going to do? We're going to do this. For line in. Oh, and I also need to do this. I forgot a detail here. As FP. So this behaves, this is your, just think of this as your file pointer here. That's all it is. So it's just quite similar to what we did before. So we just say for line in FP. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say print line. And the thing I'm going to remember to do is I'm going to remember to do this because the lines in the file will have the new line symbol at the end. So to avoid getting a double new line symbol, which print would ordinarily, print supplies one and the file supplies one. We only want one, we don't want two. We'll use the end equals empty string to prevent that from happening. Okay, so this is our first little version of our cat file, of our cat program. And so let's try cat donor.txt. You could just do it on any file, and you can see file prints to the screen. Now I'll tell you a couple of advantages of this. One is when the with block ends, files closed for you so you don't forget. Now, let's go ahead and make a small improvement in this program. If I were to do something like this, I'm going to say, oh, I did cat. Oh, what am I doing? Of course, cat's gonna work. Yeah, see, now we're actually seeing that our Python program works, and it works in a way identical to cat. So here's something that can happen that's annoying. Okay, I'm calling it on a non-existent file, and look at all that ugliness that I get. There's a couple of ways to dealing with this ugliness, sort of two possible ways. And one way is I would do something like this. If len of argv is less than 2, so in other words, if an argument isn't specified, I'm going to say print specify a file, quit. Okay, and then I'm going to quit. So if the argument length is too short, hey, let's just specify a file and get out. All right, and quit will end the program right there. So there's no need for an else statement. And the other possibility is if I'm going to go ahead and get my friend OS out. I'm going to import OS. Okay, now I'll come down here, and if this does not exist, all right, so let's say not, please. Okay, so if that file does not exist, okay, so I'm just going to print out an error message, and I'm going to quit here too. Okay, so now I've protected myself from the possibility that somebody's trying to cat a file that doesn't exist. Now let's test our program. Okay, that worked. Now let's do this. Index out of range. Oh, let's think about what we did here. Let's take this here, delete it, and place it down here. That way, we know that the argument is present. Do you see what we just did? We moved this down so that the argument would be present. So now let's try that again. Okay, see, it just says specify a file. All right, and so now if I go Python cat.py platypus.jamesbond, which I know doesn't exist, it tells me, oh, file name is not defined. Uh-oh, we gotta do this. Okay, that's where we need to place that. Now let's try that again. All right. So you're seeing me build this program in real time. Yes. And see, now the file. Now we have pretty good protection from something going wrong. You could also do a try except, but I kind of like this a little better because it tells the user a fairly specific reason that the program ended in error. Now I'm going to make one other improvement to this file. If I go to the top line here, and I go shebang, and this is mainly aimed at Unix users. put the shebang line in like so. Plus x cat.py. I'm going to make it executable. And see, it showed my file to the screen. And if you have a bin directory and the bin directory is in your path, you can put it in the bin directory, and then you don't even need, A, you won't need the /, and B, you'll be able to run it from anywhere in your file system. Okay, that's a common thing that we land up doing. So you can see here a couple of things. One is I'm showing you a little bit about how to handle errors, because there is uncertainty when you're dealing with files and you request that a file be open. That file, if you're opening for reading, that file needs to exist or you're going to have a problem. A file needs to be specified. And this is how you can make that happen. And then finally, you do your little operation here, and the program, once you get to this stage, happily runs. Now, we use this context manager here, which is nice because then we don't have to worry about closing the file. In a program, you definitely want to close a file, because otherwise you can have problems, especially if you're doing multiple operations on files inside of a program. Now, one other question you might ask is, well, I can use to redirection at the command line to put things in the file, and that's how I can store things in my Python programs. Well, that is nice. You can store the output of your Python program in a file using redirection. But what if you wanted to take things and stick them into different files and have several files open at once for reading and writing and do complex operations? That is where this really comes into its own. So this is our first example, cat. Now, we're going to do another example. We're going to create something that copies a file. And we already know what the basic operations are, but let's go ahead and do this with a context manager so we can see it at work. In fact, I'm going to steal. Mediocre artists are inspired. Great artists steal. I believe that something to that effect was said by Picasso. So I'm going to go ahead and see how much of this code I can reuse. Yes, in fact, here, okay, so for copy, you need to specify a donor file and a recipient file. Now, the recipient file does not have to exist. Now, you can, and maybe we'll make our copy have good manners. If the file exists, hey, we could actually, well, I will leave this to you. You could actually insert some code, and you could ask before you overwrite. So that's kind of a nice little exercise that I'll leave to you. But here we say specify this, okay? This we can use pretty much the same, okay? So now how does this work? Okay, file name, I'm going to change file name to donor file. Okay, so I'm going to change this right here. Okay, now the next thing I need to do oh, I see, I forgot my D. Anyway, I'll just do this. Okay, so the second argument, that's going to be our recipient file. Okay, so here we have our, so once we get past here, and we know we have two file names specified, there they are. Okay, we're going to check and see if that file, that donor file exists. And if it does not exist, and I better change this to donor underscore file. The dangers of refactoring. All right. File does not exist. I'm going to put a period at the end. I'm going to be fastidious. Okay. Now, there we check that. So now, how are we going to do this? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, all right. And then I'm going to say inside here, okay. All right. So I have my input file, my output file. All right. So now let's go down to this line. And it needs to be tabbed in because we're inside of a boss statement. And so for each line in the input file, we're not going to print. What are we going to do instead? We're going to say fpout.write. All right. And then I'm going to say line. And I'm going to get rid of the end equals. Okay. Now, let's remember about new lines. The new lines will be in the lines in the file. And write does not automatically put a new line at the end as print does. So this should copy the file without any difficulty. So let's go ahead and, all right, let's test it out. Oh, that's right. I'm going to say copy.py. There's my donor. There's my recipient. Ooh, I still have a file name in there. Let me find it. Okay. Like I said, the danger of refactoring. Refactoring is the process of updating variable names in program structure. And yes. All right. Oh, that was interesting. Oh, because I forgot to do this. And look at that. Copy and foo are identical files. So let's go back in here. And you'll notice that when we use the context manager here, there is no need for you to close the files. The file will automatically, when this block exits, everything is closed, it's clean, it's nice, and that's just one fewer possible mistake that you might possibly make. Okay, so this is the using of the context manager, the with statement. In newer code, you will see people do file IO with this. In older code, you will see the version that I did in the previous videos. You'll still see both of them around because some habits just die hard. And see you next time.